This show contains spoilers and adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
Movies with Ron, movies with Ron.
Hell yeah, motherfucker.
Movies with Ron.
All right, you guys seen this preview for The Shape of Water?
Yeah.
The new film by Guillermo, what's his face?
Del Toro?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like...
Who's that guy look like to you? That fish man? It's a fish man, Rick, but it's like a romance story. He's doing the same thing he did with Crimson Peak, trying to show you like a creepy thing, and you're going to go see it because of that, and then it's going to be like a romance movie. It's basically like the government finds the Loch Ness? No.
Cthulhu.
Who's the green guy? Old black and white movie. Fish man.
Swamp Man.
The creature from the Black Lagoon.
There you go. Like, pretend they catch him, and then there's a woman that works there, and she falls in love with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting twist. I've seen The Creature from the Black Lagoon, along with some of the other Universal horror movies, because I've been studying up for the Dark Universe.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Dark Universe. I forgot that was a thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
I hope they keep going with it, man.
See you in 2019.
I know.
Please make it sooner.
But it's like, okay, this fish man in The Shape of Water looks just like Abe Sapien from Hellboy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fucking weird, dude, and I don't know. Guillermo del Toro. I guess I still like him.
There's no reason to not like Guillermo.
Yeah. I'm not going to see this, though.
I will.
I don't know. I'll see it on video.
I am glad I didn't go to the theater for Crimson Peak.
That was better than I thought it was going to be, actually. So, I don't know.
It had some really great moments, but it was like chewing shoe leather to get to them.
Yeah. Guillermo, he has some sexual hang-ups.
Explain.
I don't know. He wants to be a fish man. He thinks that's the only way he can get a hot girl is if he were a fish man.
And that is just fine.
Welcome to episode 60 of Movies with Ron, the podcast where my older brother surprises me with a movie he saw because I don't go see him anymore, and he explains the whole thing to me from beginning to end. Keep listening and you'll end up liking his versions better. It's okay if you've seen the movie. It's okay if you haven't seen it. The experience is unique, so let's get it on. I'm Chris, your MC for the time being. Across from me, our sound and sample guy, Rick.
Heyo.
And don't forget, folks.
He's the ball cracker, death on foot. You know him, you love him. He's Ron. Ron.
Hey, Ron.
Hello.
So, Dunkirk.
Oh, yeah.
Christopher Nolan. He hates Netflix. He doesn't like people making movies, putting them on Netflix.
Yeah?
Sorry, dude.
He's like, I make a film and it has to be in the theater. I like people to experience it. And, fuck him, man.
Why?
Because, like, how many movies get released in the theater? Why are you gonna knock, like, what the little man has to attain to?
He really shouldn't.
He's, like, in his ivory tower being like, oh, fuck that, man. Like,
I agree, he's probably living in an ivory tower. And he should not knock Netflix. But he's a high-profile director, and what else would one of them say?
yeah, I guess.
He's just flexing his muscles, being a dick.
That's like Prince or Michael Jackson being like, I'll fund my own tour and have lots of fireworks and shit and bring the crowd. Yeah, that's totally my production right here. Some people don't have that shit. We make do with what we can. So, Netflix.
Yeah, I hope future filmmakers don't listen to that shit. If you got a story, find any way to get it to people, you know what I mean? Oh, also, Christopher Nolan does not allow chairs on his movie sets. So...
He's a hard-working man. Nobody needs to be sitting on their ass on the job.
Dude, a film set is where you sit around and wait the most in
Yeah.
any job.
Okay.
There's types of jobs like that. We call them hurry up and wait jobs.
Yeah.
The military's like that. Like, when you're on, when you gotta be on, you gotta be there, dude, and you gotta be 100%. But, like, 90% of the time you're on a movie set, sitting around waiting. Usually waiting for people like Christopher Nolan to be like, okay, I'm ready now.
Yeah.
You know?
All right, that's it.
All of you assholes stand around while I figure this out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, I'm sold. Fuck Christopher Nolan. All right.
You guys know who Kurtwood Smith is? Ron, who's Kurtwood Smith for the 12-year-olds?
That's Clarence Boddicker, man. Also known as Red from That 70s Show.
Yeah, the dad from That 70s Show.
Yeah.
And it played a pretty good bad guy in RoboCop, being Clarence Boddicker.
Like the perfect bad guy.
He's got that scene where he goes into Dick Jones's building. He has to talk to the secretary,
Yeah.
right? He's like, I'm here to see Dick Jones, but I've got some time after. Maybe you could fit me in.
Yeah,
Coolest
man.
fucking pickup line ever, man.
I know.
And it's like, you just got done seeing him, like, be unbelievably cruel to human beings.
Yeah.
And now he's, like, trying to get laid. Oh, man. Well, it turns out she did fit him in because they got married and had kids.
What? Yeah.
So, yeah, real husband and wife there. That was where they met.
That's cool
Holy
as hell, man.
I know, man.
Wow.
Yeah. Fucking RoboCop.
Just give me my fucking phone call.
Speaking of Smiths, do you know why there's so many Smiths in around? You know, the surname Smith.
Nope.
Well, we're in America. A lot of times, your surname you got from the job
Yeah.
that your ancestors had that was passed down. Like
Blacksmiths.
John Wagner was a wagoner.
Uh-huh.
You know, and yeah, the Smiths were blacksmiths,
Right.
right? So most of the men, they were soldiers or they were knights. You know, they were fighters.
Uh-huh.
So they had to leave the castle to go to battle, right? And they all died. And all the blacksmiths who were valuable, who they could not lose, had to stay behind and keep making weapons and shields and shit.
Yeah, so they all survived.
Yeah, and
To
had a bunch of kids.
repopulate the earth, yeah.
Yeah. They got all the poon.
Damn right. Fucking Jody motherfuckers.
Yeah. But wouldn't that make a good movie? You know?
Absolutely.
When all the knights go off, you've got, okay, there's always some knights that stay for defense.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes the other side is always creative. And in this movie, they are, you know. There's some of the worst bad guys. They're waiting. They see all the good guys leave, you know. The blacksmith, it's Jason Statham, you know. He's got a son. He's training him,
Yeah.
you know. And he's got his brother. Cast Jason Statham's brother.
Taylor Kitsch.
Who is that?
That's John Carter.
Oh, yeah. All right, that'll work. So he's his brother. They run the blacksmith shop, right? But the thing is in order to make good weapons, you have to know how to use the weapons. So they're like good fighters,
Fuck yeah.
but they never use the skills, you know? Their job is to make them. But, and the good knights that stay behind, I'm putting it in medieval times. The good knights stay behind. They're the lazy ones. Because they're the ones that stay behind, right? They're kind of like assholes, you know, giving Jason Statham and Mr. Kitsch a hard time.
Yeah.
Mr. Statham's just trying to also train his young son how to be a blacksmith. Oh, then they get attacked, right?
By bad guys.
Yeah, yeah. The good knights do. And they suck. They get killed. So the thing about blacksmiths is someone who makes weapons for a living can see how every single mundane object can be used as a weapon.
Yeah.
They build weapons. You know, they're good with that. So we're talking like fucking Jackie Chan style fight scenes here.
Right.
Where everything is a weapon. I mean, come on. Can you imagine it?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Then, you know, it goes all throughout the castle.
Yeah, all these coal shovels and goblets.
Fucking, and just keeping it at the home base, the castle, makes it a smaller budget, you know? Focus on the fighting.
Yep.
But then at the end of the movie, it's the big bad guy, but he's got to fight him in the blacksmith shop.
Yeah.
It has to end where it began.
Where it's all hot
Right.
and and glowing.
Jason Statham has to, like, in the end, like, grab the bad guy's head and shove it in some molten metal.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, he loses his hand. You know? So the end of the movie is you hear the same clickety clank clank hammering metal that you heard at the start during the beginning credits.
And it's his son.
Yep. He's telling his son how to do shit.
Yeah.
Right?
I love it.
The blacksmith. Huh?
Let's write that. The blacksmith.
That would do it.
Dude, I'm liking it. Patent pending.
All right, guys. You know what time it is?
Is it time for
Movie Death of the Week.
All right.
Yeah.
You would be correct.
Lay it on me.
This week's movie death is by request, which I also take, by Mike. It is 1995's GoldenEye, and the death is Alec Trevelyan. Mr. Sean Bean playing 006. And you guys remember GoldenEye. Pierce Brosnan?
Yeah.
His first movie as 007?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The comeback.
And you know, GoldenEye, I was at the right age because it has those two really good-looking ladies in it.
Yeah.
See, there's the good one, and she's like she tastes like strawberries kind of
Yeah.
hero's love interest. But then there's the bad one. She's who you see first.
Famke Jensen.
Yeah.
Xenia on a top.
Oh, man. And she's who he sleeps with first.
Right.
Like, kinda, halfway. Then they have a fight scene. But it was cool because in all the Bond movies, there's always the first random lay that he has.
Yeah.
And they always find, it's either a supermodel. Sometimes that's the name. And then the Bond girl is more like beautiful, but she's not famous.
Right.
But, they implemented that into the bad guy thing.
Yeah.
It was a cool, GoldenEye's a good Bond movie.
Yeah. It was a breath of fresh air.
And, you know, Sean Bean, a lot of people, they think he's a Boromir and a Stark from Game of Thrones. Before all that, in the eyes of, like, Americans, he's like a perfect British bad guy. Like, that's who he was before that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like almost every role he had, he dies. He dies in. He's almost famous for dying with his roles. And caught the unofficial title of, most unlucky character actor in Hollywood?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Almost every character he plays dies. On top of that, his name, Sean Bean, should rhyme. So the luck just carries on right there.
Sean Bon.
Scene Bean.
But he fakes his death in the beginning of GoldenEye,
That's right.
but then he comes back. He's 006.
006 as the baddie.
Yeah.
Bad guy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Such a good reboot. You know?
Yeah.
All the Pierce Brosnan ones, they got hokey right after this.
Yeah. When you said this was a comeback, I was like, yeah, his first and his best.
All right, Rick. So Sean Bean, they're fighting on a giant satellite.
Yes, they are fighting. And it is the final part of the movie, the third act. And fighting in what is or what was the biggest satellite in the world, which is absolutely real in this scene. It's something like 4 or 5 football fields in width and length.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's a great set to be shooting on. 007 and 006 are fighting on the very end of the receiver for the satellite. An enemy helicopter comes down, probably to shoot out 007, but you see that Strawberries chick
Yeah.
pop up from the back of the helicopter and point a gun at the pilot's head.
Yeah.
And that distracts Alec Trevelyan, in which James Bond gets the upper hand and punches the shit out of him, knocks him off of the receiver, and just before he falls to his death, James Bond catches him by his foot. And the line in the film, which started at the very beginning, "For England, James."
For England, James? No. For me.
And he lets lets go of his boot, and 006 falls to his death. Or what was supposedly his death.
People are going to say, he doesn't die there.
No, he doesn't.
He dies like, you can see he's still alive, like right before everything explodes, I guess.
Yeah, unnaturally, he survives the entire fall just to lay there and be,
Like every bone in his body is broken.
oh yeah. And just before the entire site gets demolished and exploded, the receiver drops from its hanging heights and basically crushes 006 to death. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your
Movie Death of the Week.
All right, one last thing. Ben Stiller is in this new movie. There's a trailer out. It's called Brad's Status.
Okay.
Yeah. He's taking his son. They're looking for colleges. And he's checking up the statuses of all of his college buddies.
Yeah.
And they're all successful. And he's not as successful.
Right.
But he doesn't realize that. So he's having a problem. He's having a crisis. He's realized he's middle-aged and he still has to find himself.
Yeah.
Ben Stiller, the king of movies about middle-aged men finding themselves.
Yeah.
We had Greenberg.
I don't even know what that is, man.
That was his first one. Didn't do so well. Then, While We're Young, he did with Naomi Watts.
Okay.
Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like finding yourself on crack.
I fucking loved that movie.
I despise that movie.
No way.
But now we have Brad's Status.
Yeah, okay.
Everyone, they don't know what's up. They think there's a problem with Ben Stiller. They think he has issues. Well, I found the issues.
Okay.
This is just a free quote on IMDb that Ben Stiller has said. I have not been an easygoing guy. I think it's called bipolar manic depression.
Oh, shit.
I was like, okay, there you go. That's never going to stop.
I think this is what it is.
He's currently on the tarnished side of the pendulum swing. All right, so he's got to do Brad's Status.
Yeah.
Then when it swings the other direction, we'll get a dodgeball too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All right, so let's keep an eye out for dodgeball too. All right, man, I gave you your pick of the litter, anything you wanted.
Yeah.
To recap, tonight.
I chose not to go to the movies.
All right.
Last week when we were talking about our favorite horror movies, you mentioned one that was so close to my heart, and I had completely forgotten about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kicking myself in the ass as soon as you said it. So I decided to do Madman.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, man.
Folks, Ron showed me this movie. First time I saw it, I was like 13 years old. Man, scary as fuck.
It was, man.
But even as an adult, there's stuff to appreciate.
Oh, hell yeah.
The lead is a bookworm.
Yep.
Her boyfriend's the cop.
Yeah.
And he's a familiar face.
Yeah, man. Like, I looked him up, and he's just in a whole shit ton of television. He's in a bunch of movies, too, but, like,
Yeah.
nothing that you really remember. But as soon as you see his face, you're like, oh, yeah, I totally know that guy.
I love their life in this movie together.
Yeah.
They seem like, I don't know, I just love it. I'm Madman. Let's do it.
Indeed, let's do it. You know what, Rick? Lay me down some bass. When I was a kid, I used to stay up late, jacking off to Cinemax. Man, I couldn't wait. But some Sometimes I couldn't find tits on TV. No. That's how I found this film that scared the shit out of me. It's episode 60. It's a movie Rick's never seen. So it's time to have some fun. Here on Movies with Ron.
Okay, then. I'm out of breath.
All right, folks. Why don't you start slicing pieces off of your fucking face, because it's time for I'm Madman on Movies with Ron.
It's showtime.
Yeah.
Get the people out. Come on. Get the people out.
All right, so we start off with the MGM lion logo, and he's like, "Roar, I'm an asshole." And then what feels like 15 fucking minutes of opening credits just on black screen. Mm-hmm. And then it says, "I'm Madman." And then it's like a nighttime cityscape, okay? And there's some old-timey music like ra-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And we see this man in black come out of his apartment building. He's wearing a black cloak and a black beret.
Yeah.
So immediately he looks nefarious. He passes by the doorman who's like, "Evening, Dr. Kessler." And he just ignores him and leaves. The phone rings and the doorman answers it and he's like, "Yes, ma'am? Yes, ma'am. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. We'll check it out." The manager of the building comes out and he's like, "What the hell's going on here?" "Well, that was Mrs. So-and-so, and she says she hears like animal noises coming out of the apartment next door." Manager's like, "That's Dr. Kessler's apartment. We need to go check it out. And if he's got any animals, he'll be out on the street by morning." So he goes up to check it out. He knocks on the door. No one answers. So he lets himself in, and all the lights are out. And you can immediately hear liquid dripping. All right. And the lights won't work, so he's like walking around with a flashlight, looking at everything, and it's all like full of gross, weird shit. Like he's got jars full of like meat.
Yeah.
You know? He's also got like empty Chinese food cartons everywhere, and they're all full of roaches and shit. At that point, we indeed hear an animal noise, and it's like scratching around, and then some scratching. The manager looks down and sees 2 logs of shit sitting on the floor. He passes by like a steamer trunk that has all these holes cut into it, and then you just hear somebody talk from inside, and it's like, meow. And he's like, "Oh, good God, it's a child." He gets on the phone to the doorman, and he's like, "Call the police, just do it." Now we, the audience, can see that the steamer trunk is now open. Mm-hmm. And now there's something in the room creeping around and hunting the guy. And we see from its point of view, and it's like hiding behind shit. And then all of a sudden, rawr, it jumps out and fucking attacks him. And then it just cuts to this blonde girl just like, oh, looking up from the book she's reading.
Yeah.
And she's all scared.
What's she wearing?
She's wearing a long, flowing white silk nightie.
Yeah.
It's very form-fitting and sexy. As she gets up, startled by what she read in the book, she knocks over a rose onto the floor. So she's walking around her apartment. She's a little spooked, okay? And she's walking around. She starts to hear a fucking scratching noise. And we're like, what the fuck? And then boom! This fucking monster rips her fucking door out and busts in and fucking attacks her. And it's like animated with like claymation.
Yeah. Some Ray Harryhausen going on.
But you know what? It's a fucking monster, man. And it's, it's scary enough.
Yeah.
And as it attacks her, it's like, ream, ream, ream. And then we just see another book close. And it's this pulp novel called Much of Madness, More of Sin. And now there's another blonde girl reading this book.
Yeah.
So she was reading a book about a girl reading a book. This character is played by the same actress that just got attacked.
Yeah.
Okay? Only this time, She's wearing some much sexier underwear. She's wearing panties and still a silk lacy nightie, but it's only right under the boobs. And she's wearing glasses.
Yeah.
So she's all scared after reading that book, and she calls her boyfriend Richard.
Hey. Hi. How are you?
So she just gets his voicemail, and she's like, hey, I'm a little scared, so I wish you would come over. I'm going to be up for a while, so give me a call. And then there's like thunder and shit because there's a storm happening outside. She looks on the floor, and there's a fucking rose on the floor.
Oh.
Yeah. So she picks it up, and she goes back to the couch, and we can hear some piano playing off in the distance. She turns around, looks out the window, and across the street is a piano repair shop. And the guy that works there, restoring pianos, is just up late, playing piano by himself.
Yeah. It's like playing it for the night.
Yeah. So then she starts reading again, and it fades to her finishing the book. And then her doorbell rings. And she's like, who is it? And you just hear this guy go, police, open up! And she's like, oh, Richard. She opens it up, and it's her boyfriend, Richard. And he is indeed a cop. She hastily cleans up some nasty-ass, garbagey Chinese food cartons. And then they run to each other's arms, and he's like, hi. And she's like, hi. You okay, babe? You sounded a little agitated on the voicemail. And I was like, man, where do I know this actor from? So he sees she's reading some scary book, and he gives her a bunch of shit about it. He's like making fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
Picks it up and starts reading it out loud. And it's like, and then Dr. Kessler, he took the unfertilized egg of a jackal and put it into a human surrogate. And he's like, man, what the fuck are you reading? I know what happened. You scared yourself again, didn't you? And she's like, wow. So then they just start making out.
Yeah.
It is hot.
It's great, man. The set design,
Yeah.
the mood, it's so noirish. It's a good movie.
Yeah. And he's like, so what happens in the end of the book, babe? What happens anyway? She's like, oh, yeah, the surrogate dies, and then Dr. Kessler has to raise the jackal boy all by himself. And then someone accidentally lets it out, and he has to go out and hunt it down. And then they keep making out some more, and the lights go out, and then the sex begins.
The piano guy still playing?
He is indeed. So the lights are out. It really should have faded into another scene, but we stay with them. And he's like, on top of her. And she's like biting his arm and shit. It's weird. And as he's like on top of her rutting, she looks out the window and sees the pianist leave.
Yeah.
So it cuts to the next day where she is at work, and she works in a little hole-in-the-wall bookshop. It's like all full of fucking books, floor to ceiling. And she works with some salty brunette named Mona. And they're talking about her relationship with Richard and how he's a cop and he's like, cock of the walk. And Mona's like, oh man, I wish I had a big old strong man like that. Fuck yeah. You can see Virginia, which is the name of our heroine, looking for something. And Mona's like, what the fuck are you looking for? She's like, I'm looking for this book called I'm Madman. It's by a guy named Malcolm Brand. He's just such a wonderful writer. He's so passionate, and he's like way better than Stephen King. And there were 2 books of his that came in with an estate sale. One was this one, and then the sequel to it is I, Madman. Have you seen it? So Virginia goes upstairs into the attic to look around. She passes by a big old steamer trunk with a bunch of fucking holes in it. She hears some scratching on the inside. She opens it up, and then just a whole bunch of shit falls out of it. Like books and papers and like maybe some old medical supplies. It's just garbage, basically. So she doesn't find her book, and she's walking around the store. She looks up into one of those mirrors, those anti-theft mirrors.
Yeah.
And she sees the fucking Dr. Kessler guy, like, looking at her in the mirror, and then he just, like, disappears around the corner. Yeah. So she turns around and looks, and the guy's gone. There's nobody there. She's looking around for whoever it was, and, nope. She asks Mona about the book again, and Mona's like, you know what? Maybe somebody bought it. And then it cuts to Virginia in her acting class. And there's a man and a woman up on stage doing like Othello, okay? And the woman is a redhead. Virginia's just sitting there watching, and her buddy Lenny walks in. He's like, yeah, hey, sorry I'm late, babe. And he's got like dark hair, and he's kind of tall. Turns out they are acting partners in the class. And they're sitting there making fun of the redhead, whose name is Colette. And the instructor's like, oh, yes, an announcement. Colette has now been cast in a TV movie. Isn't that great, everybody? Everyone applauds. Virginia's like, I hate her. And he's like, yeah, you totally should have gotten that role. Hey, why don't we go out to dinner? And she's like, no, I'm sorry, I have plans with Richard. And then the instructor's like, hey, guys, all right, we got time for one more team. Why don't Kelly and Tony go? And then Lenny's like, oh, we're not going to get to do our Cyrano. I bought a new nose and everything. And he puts on this giant fucking long nose. Cuts to her walking home with groceries, and in front of her doorstep is a little package. She walks inside and has a message on her answering machine from Richard. And he's like, yeah, sorry, babe, I'm a cop, and we're doing a big stakeout, so I'm not going to be able to make it for dinner. She opens up the package, and it is I, Madman, the book she's been looking for.
All right.
And she's like, oh, Mona. So now it's another stormy night, and she begins reading. Then a pretty cool thing happens. She actually gets up and walks out of frame, walks back into it, and is in a different costume. So now we're in the book.
Okay.
And I was like, man, this is cool. So this lady is alone in her house, and she's walking around. It's all lightning and thundery, and it's creepy. And she seems a little frightened. She's searching around, doesn't find anybody. House is empty. She walks into the kitchen and puts the tea kettle on. Then she turns around, and the fucking bad guy of this movie is just standing there behind her. And it's the guy in the black cloak, and he's got a black scarf over his face, and all we see is his eyes, and they're like fucking yellow, man. And he goes, hello, Anna. It's been a long time. And she's like, stay away. But I fixed it. What do you mean? Look, a clean slate, a fresh palette. And he pulls off the scarf, and this motherfucker has no nose, no ears, and no lips.
Damn.
And he is fucking terrifying looking, man. No lips, so it's just like teeth.
Yeah.
And she fucking screams. And then the tea kettle starts whistling. And that is when Virginia looks up from her book because there is a knock on the door. So she gets scared, picks up a fire poker, and approaches the door. Then the fucking doorknob starts like jiggling. And she's like, what the fuck? And then it fucking turns and the door starts to fucking open. And she's like, oh, holy shit. So she hides around the corner. And then we see a silhouette walking into the fucking house. She jumps out to fucking hit him with the poker. And then it's Richard with pizza.
Hey, babe.
Yeah. And he looks down and he sees the book that she's reading. And he's like, great. Like, he hates it when she reads. So then later they're laying in bed and the pianist is playing piano across the street again. Richard's like, is something wrong, babe? You seem a little distant. And she's like, Richard, how much do you love me? Well, on a scale of 1 to 10? 20, babe. And she's like, enough to cut off your ear?
Gee, let me think. Sure.
So he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she starts telling him about the book she's reading. And she's like, well, there's this doctor, and he's in love with this actress named Anna Templar. And she does not want anything to do with him. She thinks he's ugly as shit. But he's so desperate to please her. And one night, after a long night of drinking, he goes and he gets his old medical bag. And he shoots himself up with Novocaine. And then starts slicing pieces of his face off. And then Richard gets fucking mad at her, and he's like, man, why are you reading that shit? And she's like, oh, come on, I like it. And he's like, well, all right, just chill. But I'll tell you what, I won't cut my ear off for you, but in the morning, I'll cut myself shaving.
Oh, my God.
I love him.
And she's like, how sweet. So then later still that same night, he's asleep after all the sex. And she can't. So she starts reading. And now we get a voiceover from the mad doctor. And he's out stalking women. And he's like, they were all out tonight. All the jet blacks. He's referring to them all by their hair color. All the jet blacks, the mousy browns, the bleach blondes. But none was right until Red came along. And then we see this red-haired lady come out of a club or speakeasy.
Yeah.
And he's like, Perfection. Then the redhead walks into the fog, and the fucking doctor is like, ready and ripe for easy picking. And then he just follows her. So she's walking in the fog, and so is he, but his boots start clicking.
Yeah.
So she realizes what's happening, and she just starts fucking running.
Time to start running!
So she turns around and sees him, and she's like, holy shit. She gets into her apartment building, turns around, locks the front door, okay? Then she just walks across the hallway and presses the elevator button. She's like, come on, come on. And she turns around, and the window on the door is like a little frosted, okay? And then she just sees this guy like, get up to the frosted window and put his hand on it and then like look through it at her. And it's fucking scary, man.
Yeah.
This movie really does the stalking and the chases very well because it shows him, you know, not like in your normal horror movies.
Yeah.
So he's standing there looking at her with his hand on the glass, and she's like, fuck this. And she just runs up the stairs because the elevator's not coming. On her way up the stairs, she hears the glass break behind her, and she's like, oh shit. She keeps running. She stops at the top of the stairs, looks down, and yep, there he is at the bottom of the stairs just fucking staring up at her. And his face is covered. He's got those fucking yellow eyes, man. He's fucking scary. I was like, Jesus. So she runs, and he follows her. And she's like, get away from me! She gets to her apartment door, and she's like struggling with the keys, you know, struggling with the door, struggling with herself. She turns, looks down the hall, and it's a really, really long shot, and you just see him standing in the center of the hallway. And then there's like a super fast zoom, and it gets right up into his face, and he's just sitting there holding a fucking needle in his hand. Like a hypodermic needle.
Yeah.
And then he just starts walking towards her, and he actually gets to her as she's getting into her apartment, and he catches her hand before she shuts the door, and he stabs it with the needle, and he's like, just a little something to help you sleep. So she's freaked out from that and doesn't quite get the door shut, and he gets into her apartment, and now she's like walking around all groggy and, you know, drunk a little bit.
Yeah.
So she's stumbling around the apartment trying to escape him, and now he's inside, he's just walking real slow, because now he's got this. And he's like, no. I'd like you to count backwards slowly from 100. He starts walking towards her, and he's like, 99. 98. And she's freaking out, she's running. 97. And now she's a lot slower. When she gets into the bathroom, there's nowhere for her to go. So she's just freaking out in the bathroom. He keeps counting down. And then finally she just falls to the floor. She's just totally drugged out. He gets up on top of her, and then he lifts into the air a straight razor. Cuts off her entire fucking scalp. Holds it up in the air. It's a big bloody wig of red hair. Right then, Virginia stops reading the book. She's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Fuck this, I'm going to bed. Next day, she's sitting at the bus stop. She starts reading. Then the bus shows up, so everybody like, get you up, and then they form a line to get into the bus. And then a hand just kind of pushes her fucking shoulder, like, hey, bitch. She turns around. Holy shit, there's the fucking bad guy fucking staring at her. It's like, ring! But this time he's got fucking red hair, and it's been like sewn onto his own scalp.
Yeah.
And he goes, do you like the color? And she's like, holy shit. She turns around, turns back, and he's gone. And she's like, and then the bus driver's like, are you getting on the bus? And it cuts to her at work in the bookstore, and she's like eating some lunch or some shit. And then this cat just like jumps onto the fucking table. It's another jump scare. It scares the hell out of her. Mona's like, oh, yeah, you know, it's a cat. I fucking picked it up. You can hang out here. It's fine. You're a little jumpy. What's going on? She's like, yeah, you know, I just didn't sleep very well. Anyway, you know, that estate sale stuff, you know, it still needs to be unpacked. Mona's like, yeah, you should go do that. So Virginia ends up doing it, and she finds these weird medical textbooks, okay, and there's like all these pictures of disturbing shit in it. She looks at the name of the author, and it is Malcolm Brand, the guy who wrote I'm Madman. Mm-hmm. She's like, what the hell? She looks at the paperwork for the estate sale donation, and it is the estate of Malcolm Brand himself. She's like, whoa. She goes over to Mona and she's like, hey, where'd you find the book that I was looking for? You know, you're the one who delivered it to my doorstep, right? Mona's like, I didn't find that shit. And it's like, woo. So later, Virginia's walking home and she walks by a newspaper machine, reads the headline, and it's like, young actress Colette Berkowitz murdered and mutilated.
So while we were in the book, the redhead was that actress?
Yeah, it was Colette.
Oh, okay.
Virginia gets freaked out. She goes home, calls Richard at the police station, but he's not there. So some other cop is like, yeah, he's out doing cop shit. You know, he's not here, but I'll certainly give him the message. She's like, yeah, okay, thanks. She starts watching TV, and it's like just like boring shit. She doesn't really want to be reading the book, but, you know, she's giving it a try. Nothing good is on TV. Ironically, there was a commercial about hair growth. Then she looks down at her purse, sees the book poking out of it. She's like, fucking no way. Pushes it back into the purse. Keeps watching TV for a little while. Now we see her purse, and the book is out again. So she goes and sits on the couch near the window. We hear the pianist playing in his shop again. Playing for the night. So she closes her eyes, and she's humming along to the tune. And then you just hear, do you like the music? And it's like, ring! And then we see Virginia, and she is Anna now. We're in the book again.
Mm-hmm.
And the killer is standing in front of her. And she's like, why are you doing this? Why? Leave me alone. And he's like, you'll come around, Anna. You'll love me. I'll never love you. You can't mean that. Then he looks out the window, sees a pianist across the street in a shop playing, and he's like, ah, and he just runs out of the apartment. Virginia closes the fucking book and throws that shit. She's like, oh, Jesus. She goes to her front door, walks out it, looks down the hallway, and then sees a fucking black cloaked figure disappearing around the corner. Ugh. And it's like, whoa! And then she fucking shuts that door and fucking locks that shit. She goes and looks across the street at the piano shop, sees a guy in there playing, and then in one of the windows, in a stairwell, there's like the silhouette of a cloaked figure walking up the stairs. And she's like, oh my fucking God. Gets on the phone, calls 911. And she's like, oh, there's a murder. It's about to happen. And then the lady on the phone is like, okay, could you give us your location and your name, please? And then she just fucking hangs up the phone.
What?
Yep, not enough progress, quick enough. Goes back to look at the pianist across the street, and then sees the fucking black-cloaked killer. Walk up behind him, raise up his straight razor, and she screams out, stop! No, I closed the book! Right then, the figure turns around, looks at her, and then pulls down the shades. And we just see the silhouette of him and the pianist in front of him. And then, he starts hacking him up.
Yeah.
Starts cutting pieces off of his head somehow. Then it just cuts to sirens, and there are cops all over the fucking place at the murder scene of the pianist. And one of the cops is like, yeah, the guy cut both of his fucking ears off. It's fucking weird, man. Richard, you know, he's a detective, so he shows up and he's like, yeah, what's going on here? All right, this is the crime scene. Cool. I walk over to the window and I open up the shades. And then I realize, hey, shit, I'm across the street from my girlfriend's house. He looks up at her window and he sees a figure in the window, and then that figure disappears, and he's like, what the fuck? He goes up and he's banging on her door. She lets him in, and, he learns that she's the one who made the call. So it cuts to them at the police station, and she is giving her testimony to a police sketch artist. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, how about this? She's like, yeah, no, the eyes. Okay, yeah, they're a little far apart. They were closer together. And he's like, okay, how about this? And she's like, yeah, perfect. And he's like, okay, let's work on the nose. And she's like, there is no nose. What do you mean? And there's other cops standing in the room, and they're like, what? And she goes, well, he usually wears a scarf, but he has shown me a couple of times that he has no nose. And this lead cop is like, what did you just say? Yeah, he's shown me a couple of times. Once was at the bus stop, and he used to not have any hair until he killed Colette. Then that lead cop is like, whoa, Colette, the actress? You're saying it's the same guy who killed her, who killed the pianist? She's like, oh yeah, Richard knows. I told him all about it. And then Richard is in the room and he's like, oh shit. And she's like, yeah, he's a character in the book I'm reading. And the characters, they're coming out of the book. He thinks I'm that actress, Anna Templar. And all the cops start looking around and they're like, yep. She's fucking nuts. And the lead cop is like, yeah, but why would he do such a thing? She's like, because he thinks I'm Anna and he wants to please me. And he's like, you know what? Thanks for coming in. Hey, Richard, could I see you in my office, please? Richard's like, shit. Everybody leaves except for Richard and Virginia. And she's like, why don't you fucking believe me? You know what? Why don't you just read the book? And he's like, no, Jesus fucking Christ. I know it sounds crazy. And he's like, yeah, you know what? It does. Now I got to go get my ass handed to me. So why don't you wait for me downstairs, babe? And she's like, okay. So she goes and gets in the elevator and she's going down past the floors and stuff. And then the elevator stops and the door opens and there's a fucking killer standing right there in front of her. And now he's got ears sewn on.
We're going to Big Park!
Hell yeah. And he just goes, going down. He jumps into the elevator and then he just starts chasing her. The doors close and they have a little mini chase inside the elevator, like round and around.
What?
So they start struggling and fighting and stuff. He's like trying to hold her down and make her love him.
Yeah.
And he's like, I love you, Anna. And she's like, you are in my mind, asshole. You're from the book. This is all in my mind. And he's like, I want you, Anna. You're all I've ever wanted. Things will be better, Anna. You'll love me as much as I love you. And she's like, I'm not Anna. And he's like, I'll have your heart one way or the other. Virginia fucking gives up and she's like, okay, you know what? Kill me then. You know what? Go ahead and fucking kill me. And then he hears her say that and he just like, stops. And then he just walks off of the elevator. He leaves her alone. At that point, there's another cop in the station. He just finds Virginia and he's like, hey, miss, come on. You're on the floor of the elevator. Come on, get up. So she gets up and she goes and sits down on a bench or something, pulls out the book. She's looking at it again. She starts reading the publication page. And there's these two words on it that say nonfiction. And she's like, the fuck? So then she looks at the publisher's address, which is in Hollywood, California.
Dun, dun, dun.
So she goes and tracks it down, and she has to pass like seedy shit on the street. Like, Captain Chris's Porn Palace. She walks into this high-rise building, and now she's in the office of the publisher. And it's just this old guy having an argument on the phone with somebody about publishing shit. While he's doing that, she looks around the office, and it's nothing but posters on the walls of, like, pulp novels, not unlike the ones she's reading. So she starts to talk to him. She's like, hey, you publish? And he's like, I only publish smut.
Wow.
And she's like, well, did you publish this? And holds up I, Madman. And he just, like, stops. He's staring at it. She's like, do you know Malcolm Brand, the author of this book? He's like, what are you, writing a paper? You in college? And she just nods yes. And he's like, oh, yeah, that guy was a fucking lunatic. All right, yeah. I mean, he ended up in a fucking asylum, okay? He wrote 2 books for me. The second one, he wrote in that asylum. She's like, whoa. He's like, then he escaped. And weeks later, they found him. She's like, oh, really? What happened? He was ripped apart by animals.
He was torn apart!
He's like, yeah, you know, he wrote me that first book. I didn't really think it was anything special, but it got some success, okay? Even a small following. So I had him writing a second one, you know, or doing another project. And then he kept on making all these weird calls to me saying, like, the characters weren't doing what he was telling them to do. Okay, and they were, like, coming after him and shit. It's fucking weird as shit. He, like, returned the money I paid him. And she's like, hey, this says it was nonfiction. What the hell's up with that? He's like, yeah, he insisted that it was nonfiction. Said it was a confession. That's how he ended up in the nut house. She's like, what about all the stuff, like with him carving pieces off of his face? And then the guy's like, oh, geez, yeah. Yeah, he messed himself up pretty good. And she's like, oh, shit. Then it cuts back to Richard at the police station. He's at his desk. Phone rings, and it's Virginia. And he's like, wait, where the hell are you? Why didn't you wait for me downstairs? She's like, I know where he's going. I know where he's going to kill again. He's going to kill a victim, a male this time. And it's, he's got a Mediterranean profile. He's got olive skin and dark hair. Don't you see? He's coming back to finish what he started. And he's going to kill him tonight, just like in the book. Richard's like, listen, I'm a cop and I don't have time for this shit, okay? I actually have to go and catch the real killer. So I'll talk to you later. She's like, yeah, great, thanks. So, and now it's nighttime and she's at the bus stop. Just sitting on a bench. Just waiting on a bus. Just waiting on a bus. I'm just waiting on a bus. Just waiting on a bus. Just waiting on the bus. Just waiting on the bus. I'm just waiting on the bus. Just waiting on the bus. Then all of a sudden a hand grabs her shoulder from behind and you just hear, waiting for a bus, little girl. And it's her buddy Lenny. Scares the hell out of her. So he just sits down next to her. He's like, yeah, so what's going on? Isn't that horrible what happened to Colette? She's like, yeah, oh my God, I can't believe it. And he's like, hey, I was going to go and get a pizza and then go home. You want to come with me? And she's like, no, man. Like he keeps asking her out and then getting shot down. Killer. So he's like, well, okay, I guess I'm going home then. She's like, okay, see ya. So then he runs off. Virginia opens up the book and she reads. She's like, a Mediterranean profile with olive skin and dark hair.
Oh, shit.
And then behind her, you see the fucking cloaked maniac just like running across the street. And there's fucking cars like honking at him and shit. And he's just running after Lenny.
Yeah.
And Virginia's like, oh my God, Lenny! She gets up and starts running after them, runs into the fog. Off in the distance, there's light behind the fog, so it's like a pretty cool, shot. But we see the maniac just fucking start hacking fucking Lenny up. He starts cutting into his face. And he's like, Rah! And he just fucking dies right there. Cuts to the cops working that crime scene, and one of them's like, yeah, cut off the nose this time. Yeah, were there any witnesses? Just one. She's over there. The lead cop looks over and sees it's Virginia, and he's like, oh, hell. Then Richard arrives, and he's talking to her, and she's like, it's Lenny from my class. Why won't you listen to me? I tried to tell you. And she starts freaking out, and he ends up going like, okay, you know what? I'm sorry. Maybe I should have paid a little more attention to what you were saying, but, she's like, just read the book, please. Then it cuts to her apartment, and Richard's like, sitting there reading the book. And he closes it, and he's like, okay, I'll give you that there are some similarities. Maybe we have some kind of copycat killer, going on. But what we really need to do is figure out where he's going to strike next. He was obviously also not finished with the book when he slammed it shut. So she just goes, well, it's right here in chapter 8. And she starts reading it. And she's like, yes, he was looking for the love-starved swan. I watched her in a place full of books with a silent cat on the front steps. Don't you see? He's talking about the library, the city library. See? There's stone lions on the steps. And then Richard goes, hey, what happened to Anna in the end of the book? You don't want to know. Yeah, babe, yeah. He cuts her heart out with a scalpel, and he wears it around his neck, close to his own heart. And Richard's like, oh. Next day, Virginia's at work, and Richard calls her, and he's like, hey, check it out. I told all the cops your story. And for lack of better leads, they have decided to do a stakeout at the library. And he says he wants her there. So Virginia looks at Mona and she's like, okay, look, I'm going to have to leave a little early today because there's some police shit happening and we're going to catch this killer. Mona's pissed at her and she's like, you're going to leave me alone while you go off and do hero shit? Why don't you just tell me what's going on anyway? Oh, I will. Okay, I'll call you later. Mona's like, yeah, okay, thanks. So now we cut to the library and it's nighttime and all the cops are in the library like, setting up the trap, setting up the stakeout, okay? And Richard is like talking to the blonde librarian, and he's putting a wire on her, and he's like, yeah, okay, you sure you're okay? You're gonna be okay with this? She's like, yeah, I should totally be fine. And then she just fucking faints.
Huh?
Yeah, she's too freaked out.
Okay.
So then it shows all the customers leaving the library, and now we see Virginia is now wearing that librarian's suit, and she's also wearing the wire now. A cop looks at her, he's like, yeah, you sure you want to do this? She's like, no, I totally don't want to do this, but I'm the only one who fits the suit. So then Richard kisses her and sends her out as bait. So all the lights in the library are out, and Virginia just goes to the main desk, just starts like acting like she's working. And the cops are all in some little room like, listening. So then we start to see the cloaked killer's shadow stalking around the library. And from his point of view, he's like looking around the corner and he's watching her. And she's just wandering through the library. She's all spooked. And it's like this big open building. It's fucking weird. She like grabs her little microphone and she's like, I'm in the microfiche room. Well, wait, I think I heard something. It's footsteps. It's coming closer. Richard! And then in the little room where all the cops are, they all just go, go, go! And she's like, he's in the room! So then all the cops fucking bust into this room. They're all pointing guns, like 500 fucking guns. And they're all pointing them at the fucking janitor who just walked in. So then it cuts to afterwards, and Virginia's just like leaning on a car outside. And Richard's like, yeah, we're packing up. We're going back to the station. She's like, you're just giving up? And he's like, well, yeah, what the fuck else are we supposed to do? She's like, it is still going to happen tonight. He is going to kill someone. This isn't the only library in the city. It's still going to happen somewhere. He's like, yeah, well, it's the only library with a fucking stone lion on the steps. I'm going to have an officer take you home. So then it cuts to him back at the police station, and he's like, in trouble. Getting fucking screamed at by the chief. So Virginia's at home, and she starts reading the book, and she's like, wait, a love-starved swan? Quiet cats? Oh my God, Mona! And she calls the bookstore. Because remember, she's all talking, oh, I wish I had a strong man like that.
Yeah.
And then there was that weird cat. She calls the store and just gets a busy signal. She's like, oh God, Mona, get off the phone. Then she calls the cops, tries to get Richard on the phone, but he's busy getting screamed at in an office. So another officer's like, yeah, I'll have him call you back. Can I take a message? Uh-huh. And he's writing shit down. So then he hangs up the phone and he's walking to go give Richard the message when another cop is like, hey, let me see that. And he reads it and he's like, yep, that's what I thought. Richard's nutty girlfriend. You know what? You're not going to do him any favors by giving this to him. So then he just tosses it aside. So Virginia gets to the shop. She's wandering around like, Mona? The phone's off the hook going like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. She starts searching the store and then sees the cat on a pile of books licking up some shit that's spilled all over him. She turns around the corner and sees dead-ass Mona laying there with no fucking lips, just a bunch of bloody fucking teeth. She's like, oh my God, Mona, I'm so sorry, oh my God. So then she hears a noise behind her and turns around, and holy shit, there's a fucking silhouette there of this fucking cloaked killer, Malcolm Brand. And he's like, I knew you'd come, Anna. It's our wedding day. And now he has lips. So his whole face is like now complete, but it's all like jagged, stitched together and all fucking Frankenstein looking.
Yeah.
And he's like, fucking gross, man. So then she runs. She fucking hides off in the bookstore. Every time she hides, he finds her. And he's like, I've got you now. And she just runs away again. It happens a couple of times. He's chasing her, and then she just pushes a whole pile of books down on top of him, and he like goes down. She runs and breaks the glass of the locked front door, but there's fucking bars on the other side, so she is trapped. So she just kind of slumps down and starts crying. And now we see him, and he just like gets up, and he's walking through the store, coming to get her. Like the camera stays with him. It's fucking, It's what I like about this, like you get to see the killer so much.
Yeah.
So off in the store, she hears some wheels rolling, like a cart.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, fuck that, and just runs. And then he just like walks out of the darkness. Like he was pushing a cart. He was trying to get her to come and find him, but it didn't work. So he's like, all right, fuck it. So now she's quiet and she's sneaking past a bookshelf. And then his hands come out from the books and he grabs her. And she's like, oh, fuck. She runs. She goes up the stairs to the attic. And then a big avalanche of books happens. Because there's books all over this fucking store. And she is like sliding down the stairs on them. She can't get up. And now we see his shadow. And he has heard the book avalanche. So he just like turns and comes to get her. So he finds her and he follows her up into the fucking attic. She's up there. She turns around and sees him coming up the stairs. And there's like some smoke on the stairs, really just for dramatic effect. Mm. Then he takes his straight razor and he holds it up in the air and he's like, finally, your heart will be mine. He raises it up and the camera gives a really good close-up of his face. Man, this is a fucking freaky looking motherfucker. And he's like, rah, and then boom, boom, boom. He gets shot 3 times in the back and they all come out of his chest. Fuck yeah. Turns out it's Richard to the rescue. Shot that fucker in the back.
Yeah.
So Malcolm Brand, the killer, he just falls onto Virginia. Richard's going over to help her, and the killer's like, Anna. Richard pulls her up, and he's like, Virginia, are you all right? And then they embrace. And then the killer gets up. Richard's hugging Virginia, and he just like looks over, and he's like, what the fuck? And then the killer's just like, rushing at him. Then he jumps on him and he fucking tackles him, and then they roll around struggling with themselves for a little while. Richard loses his fucking gun. It fucking slides underneath a shelf full of books.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so now it's just like mano-y-mano. They're rolling around and Richard's like, you son of a bitch! They roll away and you see behind them is that steamer trunk with holes in it. Virginia is over here trying to find the gun underneath the shelf. Mm-hmm. And she just can't fucking reach it. Then she looks over and she sees this other book. Much of Madness, More of Sin, the book from the very beginning of the film.
Yeah.
She picks it up. Meanwhile, the killer is choking the shit out of Richard. Virginia starts reading the book out loud. She's like, the evil thing seeked him. This growling evil thing. It lived. It lived. And now we see the steamer trunk is open again. Then we hear, roar! The killer looks up, and oh, holy shit, it's the Jackal Boy monster from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Up above him. So then it fucking howls, and then jumps down onto the killer, and he starts biting his fucking face and just mauling the shit out of him. The killer is getting thrown around like a fucking rag doll by this thing, and he gets tossed aside. Then the Jackal Boy turns and looks at Richard and Virginia. Like, it's not going to discriminate. At that point, the killer, who is not dead, takes the opportunity to crawl away. Get out of here. Jackal Boy sees that happening. But right then, the killer just fucking knocks him to the side with a fire extinguisher, okay? Jackal Boy goes and falls through a glass window or something. And he's like, trying to get up. And then this giant plate of glass just slides down and cuts him in half like a fucking guillotine. Yeah, so it dies. Then the killer's like, all right. And he's still holding the fire extinguisher. He walks over to Richard and Virginia, and he's just like, all right. And he tosses the extinguisher aside, and he starts walking towards him like he's coming to get him. Then we hear another fucking roar. Roar! Killer turns around and sees the top half of the Jackal Boy stand up on its hands. It's just a torso, a head, and arms.
Yeah.
The killer looks at him and he's like, oh shit. And then the Jackal Boy just starts fucking charging at him. The killer's all horrified and he's like, oh fuck. And he starts backing up right towards the window. Then the Jackal Boy gets him and they just crash through the fucking window together. At that point, we see it from the outside and it's a whole bunch of pages from a book. So we don't ever actually see any bodies fall out. It's just hundreds and hundreds of white pages flying out of the window. And we can hear the killer like screaming as he's dying.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Rah!" And he fades away into nothing. And all these pages are just like flying all over the city.
Yeah.
And then we see Richard and Virginia, and they're like standing there at the window looking out at all that shit, holding on to each other. And then the camera just pans up over the city, and it says, "The end."
We killed it. Fuck you!
And then the credits roll, baby.
All right. That was a long final battle.
Hell yeah. What'd you think, Rick?
I thought it was pretty good.
One thing your recap does better than the movie,
Huh.
you don't notice that the further along the movie gets and he's getting the body parts for his face,
Yeah.
he is never scarier than he is at the beginning of
I know.
the movie.
Yeah.
He actually gets kind of dumber and dumber looking as he's completing himself.
Yeah.
You know, it's still an amazing movie, but yeah, him missing the nose and the lips and the ears,
Oh, yeah, man.
using the scarf. Ooh.
Well, it's tragic because he's actually becoming more human.
Yeah.
So he's actually fulfilling what he's trying to do, and it actually makes him less threatening.
Good job, man.
Thanks. Yeah, there you have it. I'm Madman on Movies with Ron.
All right, folks, if you're using Apple Podcasts, how about leaving us a rating and review? We're on Twitter and Instagram at Movies with Ron. There's a Facebook page. And those of you out there using the desktop, the movieswithron.com, thanks for listening. It's been fun.
Yeah, we love you.
Take care, guys.
Movies with Ron.